This is how your will can break any barrier. This is how your courage can inspire a community. As you continue to strive for equal access and opportunity, Wells Fargo will be by your side, helping you make it happen. This is your moment. This is how empowered becomes empowerful.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Susan Owens, and I lead Wells Fargo's commercial banking team in Maryland. I am honored to serve as the Vice Chair of the Women United Executive Council and to represent Wells Fargo as the title sponsor of this Women's Forum. Let me start by sharing what Wells Fargo is doing here locally to support our communities. Last year, we donated over $16 million to Baltimore area nonprofits, and the BBJ ranked us as the #1 corporate philanthropist in Greater Baltimore. Our employees volunteered over 1,500 hours to provide community support to organizations that tackle problems like economic disparity, hunger, homelessness, and more. Today, half of our sponsorship dollars will go toward ensuring financial and housing stability for Central Marylanders experiencing hardship during COVID. So yes, I am very excited and proud of what Wells Fargo has done in our community, but corporations can't do it all. As you saw in the video clip, your courage can inspire our community. Your will can break any barrier, and you can become empowerful. Let me share a brief personal story about my first recollection of feeling empowered as a woman. When I was in college and getting ready to graduate, my father gave me this coffee mug. I didn't drink coffee at the time, but it didn't matter. It was the message. The best man for the job is a woman. That was his way of telling me that I could accomplish anything I wanted to. He was my inspiration to work hard, set an example of mutual respect, and pay it forward. He made me feel empowered to do great things. Today, I'm not only a wife, mother, and grandmother, but also a senior leader at Wells Fargo and a community leader here in Baltimore. I got involved with Women United because of their focus on children's education, which I believe is a vital foundation to building a solid future. I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing women, all while making a positive impact on children from families and neighborhoods facing big challenges through our On Track for Success dropout prevention program. So I'm inviting you to join us because it truly takes a village, corporations and individuals coming together with a common purpose. As we gather to celebrate women and all that we can be, let's use the energy of our collective purpose to break down barriers for our neighbors in need, like today's speaker, Stephanie Land, is doing. This year, more than ever, the underserved community are feeling the impact of economic and educational disparities highlighted by COVID-19. So my ask of you today is rethink how how we can make a difference together. Let's do this.
2020 has been the year of the unthinkable, but a moment like this can bring us together to rethink the way forward. So Wells Fargo is using some of our locations as drive-up food banks to help provide 50 million meals for Americans in need, donating all the roughly $400 million in PPP processing fees to support nonprofits assisting small businesses, and committing $1 billion to help put an end to the housing affordability crisis. The unthinkable has happened. Now it's time to rethink how to make a difference.
Thank you, Susan. No one can do it alone. This is a way of work at the United Way of Central Maryland. The creation of the Women's Forum 2020 is a prime example. When we realized that 2020 is the 20th anniversary of Women United, we knew who to ask to lead the charge. Patty Brown and Sheila Murthy, who enthusiastically said yes. Patty Brown and Sheila Murthy, thank you for serving as co-chairs to celebrate Women United's 20th anniversary and the incredible impact of this network of women's philanthropy. Together with Michelle Wright, Michelle Lee, Susan Owens, and Terry Geckel, this powerful group of women gave so generously of their time, pivoted with us, and were up to every challenge. There is nothing these women can't do. thank you to these powerhouse women who lead with both their hearts and their minds.
Hello, and welcome to the fourth and final session of the United Way Women's United Digital Forum 2020. I'm Tommy Hires, your host for today, and together we can shine a spotlight on the barriers that must be broken to ensure a more equitable society. We'll be talking to an amazing barrier breaker today, author Stephanie Land, who's received national acclaim for bringing the invisible to light, people who are overworked and underpaid. I'd like to thank the main sponsor of this event, Wells Fargo, for their investment in this important series to raise awareness of the plight of so many in our region. Thank you, Susan and Wells Fargo, for your commitment and generosity. Stephanie's book, Made, shines a spotlight on a population that has been largely invisible. Those who are working 1, 2, or 3 jobs but simply can't get ahead. People whose hard work, often backbreaking work, enables us to navigate our daily lives with ease. People who are giving it all they've got to make a better life for themselves and their families, but they just can't make it. People like my mother, who when I was growing up worked for years at a local hospital in the patient transport, dietary, and housekeeping departments. But despite the steady paycheck, she needed to supplement her wages with overtime hours and a second job, and resources like the fuel fund to make sure I had everything that I needed to thrive. Why? Because for many people, what they earn, often in minimum wage jobs, simply can't keep pace with the cost of living. The cost of the essentials, food, housing, healthcare, transportation, and childcare, these things are often out of reach for lots of workers. The United Way has worked for many years to break down barriers faced by working families and individuals, to help them to keep a roof over their heads, to put food on their tables, and to keep themselves and their loved ones safe and healthy. We regularly commission a study of this population in Maryland. It's called the ALICE Report, and that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. We've talked about the findings of this report throughout this forum. It guides our work and our programs, and we share it freely with anyone who wants to use it to help others or to just learn why it's hard for so many Marylanders to make ends meet. We use it to shine our own spotlight on the need in our area, and the need is staggering. 1 in 3 households in our state cannot afford the basics. All that it can take is one missed paycheck or one unexpected expense, like a rent increase, a car repair, or getting sick and needing to go to the emergency room to throw them into financial crisis. Today, we're going to hear what it's like to live on the edge of crisis, to live a life of uncertainty, to work hard but never reap the rewards of that hard work. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Land and Denise Koch, who will join me this evening for a conversation. Stephanie and Denise, welcome. Stephanie, I know that a lot of us have read your book, or in my case, listened to the Audible version, but for those of us who haven't yet, tell us what it's about.
Well, it's kind of obviously about being a maid and cleaning houses, but it's also about what that means as a person who is trying to survive off of those very low wages. And for me, that meant at one time I was on 7 different kinds of government assistance, which is another part-time job all in itself. And it was a real struggle to be able to afford to take care of myself as far as feeding myself. And I had a young daughter that I was responsible for primarily on my own. I didn't have family to help or support me financially or even emotionally. And to me, it's about a mother wanting what's best for her child.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'll jump in here and say thank you for writing this book. Really, thank you, because as much as we think we understand what it might be like to be in that situation, this book takes us inside of it, and we really have a sense of the emotional center of what that's like. And it all sort of starts with the blessing of your daughter, Mia, that you decide to keep when you become pregnant. And obviously, as I say, a great blessing in your life. But that sends you into the cycle of becoming a single parent. And you're obviously living in different circumstances now, but I know that that's very much a part of who you are. Somebody who lived that life of having to make ends meet, as you said, to provide for this child, this love of your life. Do you think it's important now that you've become an advocate this book in itself is an advocate for low-wage earners. Do you think it's important that this started with motherhood? Is there something about being a mother and trying to provide for a child that gives you a deeper understanding of what it's like to struggle in this life?
Possibly. I think as far as advocacy, a lot of my advocacy is just trying to create a feeling of what it's like to be in my position. And a lot of that is just the universal nature of almost everybody knows what it's like to be mothered or want to be mothered or to mother someone. And a lot of that is feeding them. And so I always try to touch on this part of, wanting to provide someone nourishment, wanting to be provided nourishment, and then imagine that you just could not do that. And that pulls people in, I think, a little bit more to my story, and really touches on this nerve that allows people to put themselves in that position.
So Stephanie, there's a moment early on in the book where you talk about how, as a young girl, you help families in need through your church by buying them gifts during the holidays. And later, as a young woman struggling to find work and a place for your daughter and you to live, you were forced to accept charity, but you wrote that, there wasn't a wish list where you could ask for what you really needed, that there was no way to ask for a gift of healthcare for yourself or childcare for your daughter. Now, we all know for those of us who are in the greater Baltimore area that affordable healthcare and childcare are huge barriers for struggling families. So I'm curious to know what would have helped you then, and what can we do to break down barriers to prevent people from getting the type of help that you would have needed?
Well, gosh, my years of being a single mom were tightly bound in this constraint of a complete and total lack of childcare. I mean, to an extent, my life is still kind of revolving around a lack of childcare as my kids are all downstairs doing remote school, thankfully with my husband, but we could use a break. But it wasn't just like needing available childcare. It was needing a safe place to leave my child so that I could go to work at any hour, like not just 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I needed to be able to work on the weekends or in the evenings too, or go to school in the evenings. And it was the most difficult thing to obtain in all of the government assistance programs that I was involved with. That was always the one with the biggest packet. And I was audited several times. I had a caseworker call me and threaten to remove my childcare grant immediately because I had handed in a handwritten pay stub. And even recently, 5 years ago, when Coraline my youngest was just barely a year old, I was working quite a bit as a freelance writer. And I mean, it was still like a really good month if I brought in like $800. And I was trying to obtain a childcare grant, and they told me that I made $100 too much to get the grant. And then my caseworker said, well, it looks here like you're working from 9 p.m. to like 2 o'clock in the morning, so you don't even really need childcare. And I said, well, that's not ideal. I mean, I would like to work during the day. And there are so many hurdles that you have to jump over, and so many ways that you are kept back. I mean, when I made $50 more a month, I suddenly had a $50 copay at her daycare. And so it was, it was impossible to get ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in here because I remember you said when you first started talking, Stephanie, I think you said at one time you're on 7 kinds of assistance. And that reminded me of the line in your book where you said, I was overwhelmed by how much work it took to prove I was poor, which is what you're describing to us now. As a citizen, I find that outrageous. So what if you all of a sudden had some sort of power? What can be done to make the system better? What should be done so that people don't have to jump through those hoops? I mean, childcare is basic. You get the care so you can get a job so you can eventually pay for the care. But they're not allowing you to get to that place. What can we do, Stephanie? You've been inside and outside. What can be done?
We absolutely need to abolish work requirements. I mean, a lot of that bureaucracy going on is just forcing poor people to prove that they are working so that they, quote unquote, deserve the assistance that they're receiving. And it's asinine. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, you are required to work 20 hours a week. If you're an able-bodied person without dependents, meaning you have children over 6 years old, you're required to work 20 hours a week in order to receive a little over $1 a meal per person per day. And it is a system that is designed to constantly wrap all of your dignity up in that amount of work that you're able to do. You are only able to receive assistance if you work. And so say you do work and you are getting ahead and you get a raise and you are improving your life. You're not allowed to save money. You're not allowed to have assets that are more than a few $1,000s in some states. And so for me, it was impossible to save up money for a first, last, and deposit on an apartment. I had to hand in bank statements, the value of my car. It's a system that is designed from a foundation of mistrust. And really that is the main issue. I think that is wrong with safety net programs.
Yeah, you used the word dignity just now. I think it's a good choice of word. One of our previous panelists in a different forum talked about how other people's words and actions, when they're interacting with those who are struggling, can have negative effects on their success. And you talked a lot about this in your book, about how people treated you on the job, about how people treated you in the community when you were trying to get the assistance you absolutely needed. There was one point, if I can see it here, where you said, I wish I'd had the courage to speak up for myself, to speak up for millions of others who are struggling through the same hardships as I was. Domestic workers who worked for minimal pay, single parents, but instead I hid, I silently blocked this person on Facebook. This is someone who reached out and talked about welfare bums and that sort of thing. I mean, you knew you weren't a slacker. You knew you were working as hard as possible, and yet that stings, that hurts. What kind of effect does that have on a person and their desire to try and get out of the situation they're in?
Well, it's honestly something that I still fight to overcome. I mean, like I said before, I had this feeling of all of my value being wrapped up in how much physical work I could actually do. And I had a really hard time with that as my job went from doing a physical work where there was a definite amount of hours to being a writer, where, a lot of my work is mental and I'm thinking of stuff and I am not physically working. I mean, I'm arguably working all the time, but it's not something that I could say at the end of the day, look at this. And I still have a hard time with just sitting and enjoying a book or enjoying myself in a moment because I always feel like I need to be doing something. And a lot of that came from those posts that I saw on Facebook of, here I was scrolling through and suddenly one of my friends posted that if I was on welfare that I needed to get a drug test, or, the meme that was going around at the time saying, please don't feed the animals because they'll become dependent on handouts. And so it's a very awful kind of situation to be in. I mean, I was even in conversations with people where they didn't know or maybe didn't assume that I was on food stamps, and they would openly talk about those people taking advantage. So it wasn't just a lot of the stigmas that I knew were out there, but it got really close to home a few times. Indirectly and directly. I mean, I had a good friend, tell me, you're welcome, because her tax payments were paying for my homeless shelter that I was living in and the food that I was getting help with. So it it kind of marks you for a very long time.
You know, the pandemic is creating a new and growing population. People who've never before had to go to a food pantry, people who will soon face eviction, especially when the moratoriums end in many cities. People whose lives are being upended because their hours have been cut at their jobs, or they flat out lost their jobs in this pandemic. And it's having a disproportionate impact on Black and Brown individuals and families. So I have a two-part question for you, Stephanie. Do you see the pandemic as widening this racial equity gap even more? And why do you think, as a white woman, your story is getting so much traction and resonating with so many people?
I think there's a lot of reasons why it's getting so much traction. I mean, the first part of it is just that's how the publishing world kind of works. They tend to promote white stories, but I also see myself as someone that they possibly see themselves in, and by they I mean white people. I get up on stage and I am not only someone who looks like I could be their neighbor or their sister or someone they know. I am also a very I call myself like a likable poor person. I am a success story. I am the rags to riches. I am educated and articulate, and all of these things that we very much pay attention to. And if people are not those things in almost any variable, then we don't listen to them. And I started to see this quite a while ago, that it was happening, that my book was getting so much attention, which really surprised me, because I had been a writer who wrote a lot of things on the internet and published those things in places where a lot of people could comment on it. And the comment sections were not kind, to say the least. And so I expected that to be the reaction to my book as well. And I was surprised that it was gaining a lot of popularity. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's been my mentor for several years. And I said, they're listening to me because I'm white. Like, if this had been a Black or brown person telling this story, it would not be this popular. And we had a really tough conversation, for me as an introvert, just saying I'm not ready to go out and be this public figure and be this face for so many people. And she said, you absolutely have to. I mean, you have to put yourself out there. They're listening to you. And if they listen to you, then they might listen to other people. And to go with the pandemic question, I saw a lot of that happening for the first time since I've been an advocate and a writer for social and economic justice. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were suddenly realized that there was this whole population of people that we quite heavily relied on who couldn't call in sick. They had no sick pay. They had nothing to support them if they missed even one shift of work. They couldn't pay bills. They couldn't pay rent. And it was, I think, a collective eye-opening moment for a lot of middle and upper class populations. But then it was just, the news came out that Black and brown people were heavily affected by the coronavirus at greater rates than white people were. And it just seemed like all of that chatter kind of went away, and they became invisible again. And it was really disheartening. And I can't say that it wasn't expected, but it was a really difficult thing to watch, to the point where now it's 1 in 1,000 Black people are dying from coronavirus. And it's unspeakable how that has happened. And it's because they are those essential workers that we applauded for so long, but now it's, go to work.
I don't know if we applauded them. We might have ignored them. I don't think that anybody thought of people who were in grocery stores and collecting garbage and cleaning hospital floors as essential. I think we've realized how essential they are because of the pandemic. Tommy, if you don't mind, can I ask you, do you think the book would have resonated the same way if Stephanie were not white? Do you think she's right in that?
I absolutely do think that. And, when I first, as I was reading the book, her story, Stephanie, your story is so familiar. And, I could have been Mia, with my own experiences with my mother. And I absolutely do think that your story is resonating because so many people will look at you and think, I am Stephanie, or Stephanie could have been my daughter. And the fact that you are using your privilege to tell this story and to put a spotlight on, the often ignored populations, I think is fantastic. So I agree with your mentor that, while you may not be ready for, or felt like you weren't ready for this moment, it's absolutely one that you needed to lean into. And I'm glad that you are.
Yeah. And I would say with now people in food lines who've never been in food lines before because of the pandemic, families who are needing assistance for the first time in their lives because of this pandemic, I think this even resonates more. Again, families who in the past were able to make ends meet and now simply cannot and need help from the government. It's my understanding that the book, at least this is my impression, came out of you sort of journaling through your life as you were living this. If that's right, then at some point it must have turned into a book, and then somehow it appears that book turned into a life mission. Is that right? Am I right in seeing that's how this all evolved?
Well, the book came from an essay that I wrote that I had written. I started it in college. And when I say in college, I was 35. So don't imagine me as like some 20-year-old. And I sent it off to Vox.com, and they paid me $500 for this essay. And it was the most money I'd ever seen at one time for anything that I had ever written. And it went so viral that an agent reached out to me that morning and asked me if I had a book in the works. And of course I lied to him and said yes. 11 months later after that, we had a book deal, which was what became Made. But I've always been a writer. So I hadn't written parts of the actual book except for those few essays. But I definitely had a lot of material to pull from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So obviously the essay allowed you to earn some money, which was great. And that led to a book deal, which is phenomenal. But did you think you would accomplish more than just a personal career accomplishment? Or do you think that there was some larger issue you were hoping to bring out?
Well, I definitely hoped so. When I set out to write the book, I thought the social justice aspect of it would kind of be like a punch to the gut. Like Upton Sinclair, how he wrote about the jungle and he accidentally hit people in the stomach. I kind of wanted to do that as, I imagined someone would pick up the book because they wanted to, see what it's like to be in other people's houses and all the voyeurism surrounding that. But I wanted to not only allow them to walk around in my shoes as a person who had been so invisible. I mean, it was my job to be invisible. I left evidence that I had definitely been in their house, but I couldn't leave any evidence that I, as a human being, had been in their house. And there's a lot going on there that, for me, that's kind of what I wanted to show in the book as far as the house cleaning goes. But I also wanted to change stigmas that surround single mothers in general. And I think that was my biggest mission. Single mothers get the brunt of a lot of blame for their poor life choices, or horrible taste in men, or I could go on and on. And I wanted to show anyone who picked up my book that single mothers not only work incredibly hard, but that they absolutely love their kids, and they would do anything for their kids. They just often can't show that to people because they're working. So that was my diehard mission from the very beginning.
And Netflix has recently started filming a series on your book, Made. That must be really exciting. What do you think the series will do to help hardworking people who don't make enough to get by?
It's hard to say. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, I have a lot of trust and faith in especially John Wells after all the work that he did with Shameless. And Molly Smith Metzler, she's the head writer, and she has personal experience with kind of living in the margins and not having enough to eat, as John does as well. And they're doing fantastic things with my story. They're fictionalizing a lot. It's very much based off of my story, which I like because I think was having a lot of anxiety about sitting on the couch with Mia and like watching this horrible time unfold in front of us, and what that might do for her more than me, especially situations with her dad. And so they are off and running with it. I have no idea what the storyline is like. I know as much as anybody else knows, and I love that.
Obviously, you and Mia lived through some really rough times. I mean, you describe apartments where there was mold on the windows and causing her to have issues with her health, and fears of literally being homeless, and restricted food, all that stuff. Now we look at you in your beautiful home in Missoula, Montana, your dream city, and I know you have another child and a husband and apparently a dream kitchen now. Are you changed? Does the book reflect who you were and now you're a different person, or do you carry all of that with you still? Can you leave that chapter behind, I guess is the question.
I try very hard to stay grounded, and remember, being able to just purchase things is still super weird. But I still have these moments of like going to grab another roll of toilet paper, and there's not only just one roll, there's like 10 rolls in my closet. And I have these moments of just like, whoa, this is nuts. And so even though I am now living a much more comfortable life financially, and I have a lot more security underneath me, one would hope. I mean, despite everything going on, I still really try to keep that memory close, and I see myself as still kind of the same person that I've always been. I mean, we always like to think that, right? That like nothing would really change us fundamentally, and so I try to not let things kind of run away with themselves on having I don't know, more than one of something instead of like this last one that I can't afford to replace.
So you went back to school, and that must have been a huge decision for you to make, given everything else that you had to balance in your life. Tell us what that meant for you and how you knew it was the right choice for you.
I guess school seemed, I mean, this was 2008, so kind of fresh out of the recession, and school seemed like the only way that I could really get a real job because I needed a job within daycare hours. And all of those jobs, I mean, even the administrative assistants at the time had piles of resumes with people with master's degrees. And so for me, that seemed like the only way that I would be able to get a job that could make me a contributing member of society. I mean, that was always my goal. I wanted to pay taxes, and contribute instead of take. And so I worked toward that. And I fought to always move forward. For me, I never wanted to feel more stagnant than I was kind of forced to be within the system of government assistance, because they do kind of keep pulling you back into it. I could make an extra $1 an hour and suddenly lose hundreds of dollars in assistance. And so I thought that school was the one way that I could somehow move forward.
In your book, you just mentioned trying to be invisible when you're cleaning people's houses. And we see different people in different homes treat you differently. Some treated you, a couple, very well, some not so well. I remember years ago, I don't remember this, but I remember Hillary Clinton saying that everybody should know the names of the people who clean the office that they work in. And I remember thinking at the time, I better go learn these names. She's absolutely right. There is a desire, and this is one of the reasons we're doing this forum, there is a desire out there to make our community better, to help, to pursue ways in which to find the people in our community who are struggling the way that you at one time struggled and assist them in turning their life around. Can you give us some ideas? I mean, for those people who are listening today and go, wow, there may be Stephanies in my orbit and I don't see them, but if I do, I need to do something. What can be done? What kind of charges can you give us moving forward here?
Well, I mean, first, go out and vote. I mean, vote in people that will raise the minimum wage and recognize that low-wage workers still deserve benefits like the rest of us get. Sick pay, family leave, all of these things that I never had as a low-wage worker. I couldn't call in sick. And if I did, I risked being fired or losing that client. I worked sick so many days. There is a way that you can support the person who cleans in your home or possibly even your office through the Domestic Workers Alliance. They have a program set up called myalia.org. It's myalia.org. And you can go in there and you can set up an account for a domestic worker, and all of their clients will donate money toward sick pay or a vacation day or some kind of pool that they can draw from if they need to, if work doesn't show up for them that day or it's canceled. At the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote an op-ed that was basically pay your house cleaner anyway. I mean, if they can't come to your house to clean, that is still a part of your budget. And it should still be a part of your budget. Just because they can't come to your house because of a pandemic going on, I still pay them. And I mean, don't be shy about leaving a big tip. I mean, even when if you go to hotels again, I try to tip as much as I possibly can. I was told by the union president of a hotel that I stayed at that the norm should be $10 per person per day, and that you should leave it daily and not at the end of your stay because the staff rotates so much. And when I posted that on Twitter, people were just like, "Oh, that is so much money." And I was like, no, it's not. So, I mean, for some people, it obviously is, and do what you can. But, I mean, just recognize that it's a human being. It's a person. It's a person who has a family, and they are doing this job because they absolutely have to. And so be gentle with how you leave your house, how you leave the rooms, your office. Be cognizant that, someone's going to have to come in and clean this up.
Thanks for highlighting some ways in which individuals can help those who are struggling to make ends meet. Do you have any advice for an organization like a United Way? What can an organization like this do to help people succeed and reach their goals?
I would say be very specific in the things that you need. I think people respond pretty well to lists of items to donate. And I always mention with that, like, they might need socks, or feminine hygiene products is usually a pretty big one. And I think people want to give something that makes them feel really good about themselves. Like, oh, I did this. I gave them a flat of canned food or something. But what people need is very specific. And sometimes for me, it was constantly like car repairs. And so I always really appreciate clinics that organizations will have where it's just like a couple of mechanics come and offer to change your oil or, check something with your car. I love organizations that do the wardrobe, where you can go and get clothes for work, and haircuts, and there's a lot of things that I think poor people really miss out on, that could help them get to work, because almost everybody wants to be able to work and support their families, and I would go as far as say everybody does. There's a lot of pride there. There's a lot of things that just we want to do by nature, but there are so many barriers that people have. It could just be going to a corner grocery store that is basically a gas station to get your groceries, because you can't walk an hour to the actual grocery store. It's very expensive to be poor, and that's a hard thing for people to remember. It is very expensive to only buy one roll of toilet paper at a time, or only one package of sanitary napkins, and so the more you can help out with that added cost of poverty, the better.
Wow, that's really helpful. That was terrific. You worked hard. Your life is different now. For those who haven't read the book, what made the difference for you? How did you make the jump from being stuck with your daughter in a situation in which you couldn't get ahead to where you are now? For people out there who feel stuck, what can they look to for hope, and that they too can transform their lives in the way that you've been able to?
I have a hard time with that question, honestly. I got a book deal. I got a pretty significant book deal, honestly. I do not know many people that has happened to. And I have a lot of friends who are writers. And so there's that. And before that, I was working as a freelance writer. Any time that I do any kind of teaching lately, it has been showing people how they can also become a freelance writer and make money, and how to make money at that, and how to ask for more money, and how to bill for the money. There's this whole complex situation with being a freelance writer. So I completely went off food stamps about 6 months before I got the book deal, and I was kind of like on the edge of whether or not I qualified, but I just finally decided, like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it's a huge, terrifying leap to go off the welfare cliff. And for me in that position, a single mother with 2 kids, I had to make about $33 an hour, or work the equivalent of 140 hours a week at a minimum wage job, to be able to afford to pay for all of the benefits that I was no longer getting. And so I I had some weeks where I was basically bouncing checks for pizza. And that was like the only food that I was eating. So it is not easy. I tell people who ask me that question to just recognize that what you're going through is extremely hard, and it is not fair, and it is not normal. I mean, for me, that was my normalcy. It was normal for me to fear getting sick because I wouldn't be able to pay rent, and that is not what a lot of people experience, and it is not your fault that you are in that position. And I didn't realize that until I was writing the book, basically, because I was writing the book from a place of a more comfortable situation, because I had this advance money from the book deal, and I could live off of that. I still lived in low-income housing, but I had the money to last me for the months that I was working on writing the book, and I realized, like, this is insane what I went through, and I grew so much in compassion for myself and for the person that I was during that time, and it was no longer this like deep pit of shame that I was still holding on to, and I wish someone had told me that when I was going through what I was, that this is extremely hard and it's not your fault.
Compassion for yourself. So people who are out there who are struggling like this, we need to help them with that. Realizing, as you said, it's not their fault and it's not right.
So Stephanie, I just want to thank you so much for all that you've shared with us today. Your story is so powerful, and we've been honored to have you here. But again, I want to especially thank you for using your privilege to help shine a light on the many people, especially Black and brown women, who are invisible, yet essential to our society and still struggle to make ends meet. On behalf of the United Way and Women United, thank you for all that you do to break down barriers to economic equity. And thank you, Denise.
Thank you. I was thrilled to see you, Stephanie.
This forum is just one of many ways we're building a movement to make life better and more equitable for people in Greater Baltimore. And we want you to join this movement by breaking barriers at home, at work, and in your community. Yeah, there's a lot of change that's needed, but it's easy to get started, to take that first step on the journey to equity for all. Let's make life easier for our neighbors who are living paycheck to paycheck, who work so hard to provide their best for their families. Your collective impact can make a real difference for them right now. I'm asking you to get started right now. To help close the divide, let's start this challenge. While you're doing that, I want to show you what the United Way is doing to close the gap on educational equity, because education is the first step on the journey to a better life.
Each and every child deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential. But sadly, not all can. Affordable, enriching childcare is out of reach for too many families in our region. Too many kids won't graduate high school. And too many students don't have the tools and support they need to learn.
A community that is very proud of where they are from. But along with the community, we do have our obstacles. There's drugs, violence, poverty.
We're talking about, we have siblings raising siblings. A lot of our students are latchkey kids. And, when we're talking about trying to meet them where they are, we're not meeting them where they are only, we're meeting that family where they are as well.
There is a challenge in our families accessing everything that the city has to offer. And so, unfortunately, what we see is that if you can't meet basic needs like getting your hunger satisfied, then everything else kind of falls to the wayside as well.
Urban schools are already limited in the time and the money that they have for things.
So our students are waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch that shuttle at 5 o'clock. Then a number of them are going to work. They have part-time jobs to help support their children and their families after that.
United Way breaks down these barriers from every angle. Our family centers in Baltimore provide free, on-site care within high schools, so parenting teens don't have to decide between paying for childcare or getting their diploma.
They already have everything in them that they need. Sometimes they just need that encouragement and that bump to get to that next step and achieve the goals that they have for themselves.
In Columbia, we'll provide affordable childcare in a region with one of the highest costs of living in our state.
The attitudes they have is incredible, but they continue to push through because they want the best for their children.
The Family Center's early learning programs and support services for parents help both children and families succeed.
One day that light bulb goes off, and you see a shift in their thinking and how they feel about themselves, how they think about the world around them.
We work with students and teachers so kids stay on track to graduate by using proven, data-driven solutions.
On Track for Success has helped us to help students. It's certainly strengthened the bond and communication between colleagues, and it's fostered a common language and structure for discussing students and ways to help them.
Giving me the time and the space to collaborate with my fellow teachers around specific student need.
So when the students come into the building, we feel like that we can protect them physically from those barriers or obstacles that are outside the building. However, those barriers and obstacles still take a social and emotional toll on our students, which can impact them academically.
Our On Track for Success program in Baltimore City Schools uses early warning indicators to help young students now so they don't have to drop out of high school later.
And so On Track for Success has been amazing in not only helping us see things that we may have overlooked, but also in giving us supports and resources that we can give to our families and help them better help their students and inevitably the community as well.
On Track for Success has offered collaboration. It has offered additional toolbox. And in some instances, On Track for Success has offered financial assistance to families.
Online classes mean even more challenges for children and families that are already struggling to get by. We're bridging the digital divide by providing the technology that today's learning environment demands. And we make sure students stay in their same school if families are forced to move when facing eviction or other housing crisis. Young Men United, the largest program of its kind in United Way history, will help 1,500 young men of color get into and graduate from college, ready to enter and strengthen our workforce.
We want them to feel like they are loved, they are cared for. We want them to feel like they can be successful in anything that they put work into.
United Way, breaking barriers, unlocking potential, improving lives, our economy, and our communities.
We're doing great, folks. Let's keep it going. Every gift of any size helps people right here in Greater Baltimore. Thank you for your generosity. We're so glad you joined us, and thank you for making the Women's Forum 2020 such a success. Now check your email for upcoming events to stay involved, including a virtual book club gathering to discuss Stephanie Land's book, Made. Thank you.
I couldn't be more thrilled that so many women are continuing to step up to make a difference. It's exactly the vision that we had when we launched the Women's Initiative, Now Women United, 20 years ago. And we wouldn't all be here today making such an incredible impact without Melanie Sablehouse. Melanie is a true champion and true pioneer of women's leadership and philanthropy everywhere she goes. She was the right woman at the right time to lead and launch Women United in Baltimore and across the nation. As the chair in 2000, She tapped into the power of women's philanthropy and brought women together to create a strong force for good in Baltimore and beyond. Her energy and enthusiasm are truly contagious. The United Way CEO at the time, Larry Walton, speaking about the success and momentum of Women United, famously said, "I just got out of their way." I couldn't,
Right.
I couldn't be more pleased that Melanie is with us, Baltimore's original chick in charge. Melanie, welcome. And can you tell us why it was important to launch Women United and why you decided to lead it?
Thank you, PJ. I am so thrilled to be here with all of you. You know what? It does seem like yesterday, 20 years ago. And guess what, girls? I think we look the same. I really mean it.
Yes.
Really. I'm looking at you and I mean, I think our philanthropy's been good for us. You know, I remember when Bob Sablehouse walked into our home. I had just taken my company public and was sitting there and he said, "Melanie, Holly Hoey just told me about this woman, Bonnie McElveen Hunter. She's in Greensboro, North Carolina, and she started this women's initiative where she's asking women to step up at the TOEFL level. And we think that's a great challenge. And now that you're not doing anything, why don't you lead the way?" You know, and I said, "You know, this sounds great." So I got a hold of Bonnie right away. And I said, "Bonnie, let's talk." She said, "Let me tell you why women have not been investing, Melanie. They haven't been asked." She said, "So I'm asking." And she said, "I understand Baltimore is a powerhouse." And I said, "How about coming to our TOEFL event, our recognition event?" It was at Timmy Schweitzer's, if you remember, and talk. When she walked in, she took 2 planes, her hair's all frizzed up. Timmy said, "This woman that you have coming in, Melanie, she gets 2 minutes. Bonnie said to me, "Melanie, how long do I have?" I said, "Bonnie, take as long as you'd like." She stood up there, told us of her philosophy of philanthropy, and asked all of us to join her. You know, "Will you join me?" Told the success, and then she tossed it over to us and said, "Ladies, go for it." And we did in a big way. And if you remember, we would ask women to invest. We'd say those 4 important words: "Will you join me?" And they'd want to know why. And we said, "Let me tell you why, ladies. You're the economic powerhouse of the 21st century. The way you think, the way you act is the way you do business. You are influencers, not only us, but the next generation. We are the women that make decisions. We are, love this, responsible for purchasing 85 to 95% of all goods and services. And it can't all be shoes, right, PJ?"
There we go.
We're buying
cars.
We're investing in stock. You know, we are 51% of the New York Stock Exchange is invested with women. So it's a place in this world at that time when we were emerging, if you remember. We were really becoming the influencers, the make it happen, the chicks in charge, which we found
chicks
finally,
in charge.
am I right? That we were a powerhouse. I mean, Larry called us a force of nature, and we were, and we still are. So it's because of you, ladies, because of your leadership, and you know what else? Because of your passion. You invested your time, your talent, your treasure. I get goosebumps when I say that, because remember we created that, the 3 T's? That's what made this work. We asked women to invest, and they wanted a return on investment. You know, whether it was to invest in the young girls so they could live up to their potential, or young girls who got pregnant that wanted to go to college. And as that young woman said, "It's because of you I was able to, and I have a 3.9 ACUME. Your impact has been so significant that in 20 years, we have raised from women $1.5 billion. That's incredible. And as Brian Gallagher, the CEO of the United Way, has said, this is the greatest, most sensational launch that we've had in the history of the United Way. So thank you, ladies. You are making a big and bold and audacious difference with your investment. Thank you, ladies of the United Way. Or domestic violence or child abuse, it didn't matter. If that's what the investment was, we threw ourselves in and we asked everybody in the world that we knew to join us. So Bonnie went off to be the ambassador in Finland. She said, "I'm part of the Frozen Chosen." Melanie, why don't you take this on the road? So I did. I went all over the country. And PJ, then you took over in Baltimore, and your leadership was explosive and contagious. But we started it all over the country, then shifted to Women's United. We started the United Way Women's National Council, which was the forum for best practices. It was such a great model. And by the way, because of you and this model, other organizations that we respect, nonprofits, are using it today because it works. So what I'd like to say to you is I want to thank you. I'm proud to be part of this team. I'll never forget it. It was one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life with you. So keep it rolling, keep going, carpe diem, ladies, and I love you.
Oh my God. I am bringing myself back to that 20 years when I first met Melanie Sablehouse. Big, bold, right? Oh my God. And I was intimidated. I was only 40 years old. And it was just at a time when I was thinking about philanthropy, but not in a big way. It wasn't like, oh yeah, sure, I can do this. It was just the beginning of my career, the beginning of the opportunity for me to really be thoughtful about my investments with regard to my philanthropy. And frankly, I would never have thought of myself as a philanthropist if Melanie Sablehouse hadn't told me that's exactly what I was. And so yes, it gives me goosebumps, like Melanie says, when she brings us back to those days. And then PJ Mitchell, I walked into your house that one day. I thought, I don't belong here. I don't know why I'm invited. And that was the day where you asked me to join the Women's Initiative. It was fair to say that my best friends are because of the United Way Women's Initiative. No doubt about it. Love you guys. And Sheila Murthy, you remember when I walked into your office with Holly Hoey and said, join us. So thank you guys so much. And Melanie, I love Bunny, but absolutely, this never would have happened in Maryland and in Baltimore without you and your commitment. And the one last thing I want to say is what moved me so much and what was different for me beyond philanthropy was your commitment to women, your desire to bring women forward. Women. It never ended. It wasn't just about the dollar. It was about women specifically. And that was very powerful and very much needed and still needed. So love you so much. So glad you're here with us.
As you can see, why we're so excited to belong to such an incredible organization. Look at the visionaries we have. Look at Melanie Sablehouse, PJ Mitchell, Patty Brown, all these amazing ladies that are such a treat to learn from, to hang out with, and really make an impact.
From these two visionaries, we grew to 46 founding members the first year. 46 in 1 year. We took on the opportunities to wrap our arms around the issues, to give with our hearts and our minds and our actions. We've made incredible impact over the years. From the stories we've shared over the past 4 sessions to all the stories that we know that you have. So many of you. We're so grateful that you joined us today and for the last several weeks as we've really dug deep and learned more about Alice and more about what we can do to help Alice and to help her family. So thank you again. So happy that you all spent time with us.
Many of us have made lifelong friendships while making an impact. That's what I love about Women United. There really isn't anything like it. Together, we come and make such an incredible difference with the thoughtful ways that we give to the thoughtful ways that we show up and take action. In 2020, we were 1,400 strong, but you know that together, we can make it much larger and even more impactful. I want us to go get the entire world, every single person that can get involved, so we can grow the circle wider, develop greater and more meaningful friendships, create greater impact, and really get things done the way that only women can do. If you're not already a member, this is your golden opportunity to join this wonderful group of women.
So Sheila, I want everyone to join today. I want us to keep building on the vision of PJ and Melanie and the vision that they started 20 years ago. When we talk about breaking barriers, that's important work that no one can do alone. That is what the Network of Women United is for, to help each other take on the hard issues together. As a member of Women United, you amplify your contribution, you get involved, you are part of something much bigger than yourselves. And we need you. I have seen firsthand how the need is greater than ever and the incredible change that we can make when the network grows even bigger.
So join our powerhouse today. Scroll down and make an investment in your own community. For less than $100 a month, you can be part of this very powerful group of Women United. Sign up on this page too to become one of our barrier breakers. We've all done so much in 20 years, and we cannot wait to see what the next 20 years will look like when you are a part of our group. We are Women United, and together we change lives.
Will you join us?
Hi, I'm Barbara Mikulski, former United States Senator from Maryland. Today shined a spotlight on those hardworking women who are trying to make a better life for themselves and for their families. But they face many obstacles to long-range success and their short-range, day-to-day needs. I'm talking about economic barriers, political barriers, workplace barriers, social barriers. We cannot accept that so many people in our region are working so hard, but they're living paycheck to paycheck or worse. That so many families are stretching their budgets beyond the breaking point to make every dollar count, and often making choices that put themselves and their families at risk while doing so. So here's the question for you. What are you going to do about it? Well, let me share some ideas based on what I know works. Strong neighborhoods are anchored by strong schools. Support for quality education is one way to help people improve their lives. Never underestimate the power of a woman to create positive, meaningful change. You have the means, the might, and the moxie to do something that counts. So it's time to square your shoulders, put your lipstick on, get off of the benches and into the trenches to fight for equity, opportunity, and prosperity for working class citizens. Let's go, ladies.